The wedding photo curled and blackened in the flames, my smiling face disappearing into ash as my mother-in-law, Whitney, held it over the fireplace with a satisfied smirk. That moment changed everything. I'm Zuriel, and until then, I'd spent 3 years trying to be the perfect daughter-in-law. But perfect was never going to be enough for Whitney Ferguson. Did you really think you belonged in this family? Whitney's words cut through the stunned silence of the living room. Look at you. No breeding, no connections. Nothing to offer my son except that pretty face of yours. My husband Thaddeus stood frozen beside the mahogany bookcase, his jaw clenched but silent. Always silent when his mother attacked me. I watched the last corner of our wedding photo disappear into the flames, taking with it any remaining illusions about my place in this family. Mother, stop this! Kylie, my sister-in-law, stepped forward. This is cruel, even for you. Cruel? Whitney laughed, brushing ash from her expensive cashmere sweater. I'm doing Thaddeus a favor. Someone needs to show him what a mistake he made. I found my voice, surprisingly steady. The only mistake was thinking you'd ever accept me. Oh, look who finally grew a backbone. Whitney turned to Thaddeus. Are you hearing this disrespect? I waited for my husband to defend me. 3 years of marriage, and I was still waiting. His eyes met mine, filled with conflict and apology, but his lips remained sealed. You know what? I grabbed my purse from the sofa. I'm done. I'm done trying to prove myself worthy of your precious family name. Zuriel, wait. Thaddeus finally spoke, reaching for my arm. I jerked away. No, you don't get to touch me. Not after standing there while she burned our wedding photo. Do you know what that means? That was the last photo I had with my father before he died. Whitney's smirk faltered for the first time. Good. Let her feel a fraction of the pain she'd caused. Your father, Kylie whispered. Oh God, Zuriel, I didn't know. Of course you didn't. None of you bothered to know anything about me. I turned to Whitney. You've won. You can have your son back. But remember this moment, because I promise you, one day, you'll regret what you've done. Is that a threat? Whitney's eyes narrowed. No, it's a promise, and unlike your son, I keep my promises. I walked out of that house with my head high, ignoring Thaddeus calling my name. The spring air hit my face, carrying the scent of Whitney's prized roses. I'd helped plant those roses last summer, another futile attempt to win her approval. My phone buzzed with a text from Kylie. I'm so sorry. Where are you going? I typed back, to build something of my own. Another buzz. Please don't leave like this. Thaddeus loves you. Not enough, I replied, then turned off my phone. As I drove away, I caught a glimpse of Thaddeus in my rearview mirror, standing in the driveway. He looked lost, like a little boy who couldn't choose between his mother and his wife. Well, now he wouldn't have to choose. I pulled over a few blocks away, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. Tears threatened, but I refused to let them fall. Whitney had taken enough from me. She wouldn't get my tears too. My phone lay silent on the passenger seat. I turned it on long enough to send one final text to Thaddeus. When you find your spine, you know where to find me. Until then, goodbye. Then I did something I'd never done before. I drove to the bank and withdrew every penny from our joint savings account. $15,000. My inheritance from Dad, plus 3 years of my salary as a marketing coordinator. Whitney had always sneered at my little job, but that money was about to change everything. I had no plan, no destination in mind, but I had something better. Determination. Whitney thought I was nothing without the Ferguson name. I'd show her exactly who Zuriel really was. The sun was setting as I merged onto the highway, painting the sky in fierce oranges and reds. It reminded me of the flames that had devoured my wedding photo, but this time I smiled. Sometimes you need to burn it all down to build something better. My phone buzzed one last time. Thaddeus again. I didn't read it. Instead, I turned up the radio and pressed the accelerator. The city lights faded behind me, and for the first time in 3 years, I felt free. Let Whitney think she'd won. Let her celebrate her victory over the daughter-in-law she never wanted. She had no idea what she'd just unleashed. I was done being the perfect wife, the silent daughter-in-law, the woman who swallowed her pride to keep the peace. It was time to become someone new, someone stronger, someone Whitney Ferguson would never see coming. 6 months after leaving the Fergusons, I found myself sitting across from Bo Jensen in a downtown coffee shop, clutching my business proposal like a lifeline. "Your marketing background is solid," he said, flipping through my portfolio. "But what makes you think you can run your own agency?" I leaned forward. "Because I have nothing left to lose, and people who have nothing left to lose either break or become unstoppable." He raised an eyebrow. "And which are you? Why don't you invest and find out?" Bo laughed, a genuine sound that made other customers turn their heads. "You've got balls, I'll give you that. But I need more than attitude to stake my reputation on you." I pulled out my laptop and opened a presentation. "These are the campaigns I developed at my last job, the ones my boss took credit for. Notice how their numbers jumped after I joined?" His eyes narrowed as he studied the graphs. "This is impressive. But why come to me? There are bigger investors out there." "Because you built your empire from nothing, just like I'm going to do." He was silent for a long moment, studying me over his coffee cup. "There's a story here. Something drove you to this point." "There is, but it's not relevant to whether I can make this work." "On the contrary," he closed my laptop, "I don't invest in businesses. I invest in people, and people are driven by their stories." I took a deep breath. My mother-in-law burned my wedding photo and told me I was nothing. My husband stood there and watched. So I left with nothing but my inheritance and a promise to prove her wrong. "Revenge is a powerful motivator," Bo said quietly, "but it's not sustainable. This isn't about revenge anymore. It's about becoming someone I can be proud of." He nodded slowly. "Now that's something I can work with. Let's talk numbers." 3 hours later, I walked out with a partner and seed money for my marketing agency. My phone showed 5 missed calls from Thaddeus, like every day since I'd left. I deleted them without listening. The next few months passed in a blur of client meetings, late nights, and endless coffee. Bo proved to be more than an investor. He became a mentor and friend. "Your pitch to that tech startup was brilliant," he said one evening as we packed up the office. "But you're still holding back." "What do you mean?" "You're playing it safe. Taking the easy clients, the sure wins. That's not how you build an empire." I stopped organizing files. "I can't afford to fail." "Wrong." He perched on my desk. "You can't afford not to fail. Every time you fall and get back up, you get stronger. Isn't that what this is all about?" Before I could answer, my phone lit up with Kylie's number. I almost declined it, but something made me answer. "Zuriel, thank God." Her voice was shaky. "I know you don't want to talk to us, but something's wrong with Mom. She's acting strange, disappearing for hours. Thaddeus won't listen to me." "That's not my problem anymore, Kylie. Please. You were always better at seeing through her lies than anyone else." I closed my eyes. "I can't go back there." "I'm not asking you to. Just keep your eyes open." "For me?" After hanging up, I caught Bo watching me. "Family drama. Something like that." I grabbed my coat. "You're right, I've been playing it safe. Let's go after that luxury brand account tomorrow." He grinned. "Now you're talking. But first, dinner. You can't build an empire on an empty stomach." Over Thai food, Bo helped me strategize the pitch. But my mind kept wandering to Kylie's words. What was Whitney hiding? "Earth to Zuriel." Bo waved his fork. "Where'd you go?" "Just thinking about what you said earlier, about stories driving people." "And what's driving you now?" I stabbed a piece of chicken. "The need to know the truth, about everything." "Now that sounds like a story worth telling." He raised his glass. "To your empire, whatever shape it takes." Later that night, in my small apartment, I opened my laptop and started searching. Whitney Ferguson's name brought up the usual society pages, charity events. But there had to be more. My phone buzzed with a text from Thaddeus. "I miss you. Please come home." I typed back before I could stop myself. "Home? You never chose me over her. That house was never my home." His reply came instantly. "I'm sorry, I should have defended you." "Yes, you should have, but you didn't. And now I'm building something without you." I turned off my phone and went back to searching. Whitney was hiding something, and I was going to find out what. Not for revenge anymore, but because the truth had a way of setting everything right. Bo was right. I needed to stop playing it safe. It was time to build something bigger than Whitney could ever tear down. 1 year into building my agency, I stood in front of 50 employees, celebrating our biggest win yet. The luxury brand contract that had seemed impossible was now ours. To new beginnings, Beau raised his champagne glass, and to Zuriel, who proved that the best revenge is massive success. The office erupted in cheers, but they were cut short by a familiar voice behind me. Impressive, very impressive. I turned to find Kylie standing there, looking both proud and nervous. She'd lost weight since I'd last seen her, dark circles under her eyes telling their own story. How did you find me? I asked, leading her to my office while Beau managed the celebrations. You're not exactly hiding. Your agency's all over the business news. She sat down, fidgeting with her purse. But that's not why I'm here. I closed the door. Is this about Whitney? She's bleeding money, Zuriel. Thousands disappearing every week. Thaddeus is too blind to see it, but I've been watching. And? She's gambling. Bad. I found receipts from casinos, online betting sites. But there's more. Kylie's voice dropped. I think she's been accessing accounts that aren't hers. My stomach dropped. What accounts? Joint accounts. Yours and Thaddeus's old one. She somehow got access after you left. I gripped my desk. That's impossible. I cleared that account. Did you close it? The question hit me like a slap. No, I hadn't closed it. I'd withdrawn my money but left the account open, thinking Thaddeus might need to contact me through it. How much? My voice was barely a whisper. At least $50,000 in credit card debt. But the joint account? She's borrowed against it somehow. There are loans. A knock interrupted us. Beau poked his head in. Sorry to interrupt, but the Miami clients are on the line. Give me 5 minutes. I turned back to Kylie. Why are you telling me this? Because you're the only one she ever feared. The only one who saw through her perfect mother act. Kylie stood up. And because Thaddeus is about to lose everything, and he doesn't even know it. After she left, I sat through the Miami call in a daze. Beau noticed, cornering me afterward. Want to tell me what that was about? I showed him the notes I'd taken during Kylie's visit. His whistle was low and long. That's one hell of a smoking gun. What are you going to do with it? I don't know yet, but I need a favor. Name it. I need the best financial investigator you know, someone discreet. He pulled out his phone. I know just the person. But Zuriel, are you sure you want to open this door? Some things can't be unclosed. She's stealing from my husband, Beau. Whatever we had, he doesn't deserve that. The investigator, Maria, met us that evening. She was sharp, efficient, and asked all the right questions. If she's accessing accounts fraudulently, we'll find it, she promised. But I need something from you first. What? Tell me what you really want from this investigation. Revenge, justice, protection for your ex? He's not my ex. We never divorced. Maria's eyebrows shot up. That changes things. Legally, you're still connected to all of this. Find everything, I said. Every penny, every loan, every lie. I need to know what I'm walking into. After Maria left, Beau stayed behind. You're going back, aren't you? Not yet. First, I need to be bulletproof. Whitney won't go down without a fight. My phone buzzed. Another text from Thaddeus. Mom's acting strange. I wish you were here. For the first time in a year, I replied, maybe you should ask her about the casino receipts. His response was immediate. What are you talking about? Ask Kylie. She knows. I turned off my phone and looked at Beau. I need to move faster on that Tokyo expansion. He nodded, understanding instantly. You want to be too big for Whitney to touch. I want to be too big for her to ignore. When I go back, it won't be as the daughter-in-law she rejected. It'll be as someone who can destroy her. Careful, Beau warned. Power like that changes people. I'm counting on it. I picked up my coat. But first, I need to know everything. Every secret, every lie, every skeleton in Whitney's designer closet. As I drove home that night, I thought about Thaddeus standing silent while our wedding photo burned. Now he was standing silent while his mother destroyed their financial future. Some things never change, but I had changed. And Whitney's day of reckoning was coming. Maria's report landed on my desk 3 weeks later, thicker than I expected. Her face was grim as she walked me through it. It's worse than we thought, she said, spreading documents across my desk. Your mother-in-law didn't just access your joint account. She's been forging signatures. Show me. She pointed to a loan application. See this? That's supposed to be your signature. She used it to secure a $100,000 loan against your joint assets. My hands shook as I examined the forgery. How did she even get approved? She had help. Maria pulled out another document. Meet Andrea Rose, her sister, works at First National Bank. Andrea, she always seemed so normal. Yeah, that's how they work. Andrea's been pushing these loans through, bypassing normal verification procedures. My phone buzzed. Kylie again. Zuriel, Mom's losing it. She just tried to sell Dad's vintage car collection without telling anyone. I'm handling it, I replied, then looked at Maria. How much total? Close to $500,000 in loans and credit card debt. Most of it gambled away at Golden Sands Casino. I leaned back, my mind racing. Can you get me surveillance footage from the casino? Maria smiled. Already did. Want to see your mother-in-law lose 50 grand in one night? The footage was crystal clear. Whitney, looking nothing like the polished society woman I remembered, frantically feeding chips into a high-stakes poker table. Her hands trembled, her perfectly styled hair disheveled. When was this? Last Tuesday. She's there 3-4 times a week now. A knock interrupted us. Beau entered, his face serious. Thaddeus is here. My heart stopped. What? In the lobby. Says he needs to talk to you. I gathered the documents quickly. Maria, get me everything else you can on Andrea's involvement. I need to know how deep this goes. She nodded and left as Thaddeus walked in. He looked older, tired, his usual confident stance replaced by something more uncertain. You've done well for yourself, he said, looking around my office. What do you want, Thaddeus? What did you mean about casino receipts? Mom says you're spreading lies about her. I laughed, harsh and cold. Of course she does. Tell me, have you checked your bank statements lately? What's that supposed to mean? I pulled out the forged loan application. It means your mother is a gambling addict who's stealing from you, and you're too blind to see it. His face went pale as he examined the document. This can't be real. Oh, it's real. Just like the 50 grand she lost last Tuesday at Golden Sands. Want to see the video? He sank into a chair. Why are you doing this? Doing what? Showing you the truth? Someone has to, since you won't look for it yourself. She's my mother, Zuriel. And I was your wife. Fat lot of good that did me. His head snapped up. You are my wife. We never divorced. Technically true, which means half of these fraudulent loans are my problem too. What are you going to do? I stood up, gathering the documents. Right now? Nothing. But you need to make a choice, Thaddeus. Open your eyes or go down with her. There has to be another way. There isn't. She's sick and she needs help. But first, she needs to face consequences. He reached for my hand, but I pulled away. I've missed you, he whispered. Missing me didn't stop you from letting her destroy me, or from letting her steal from us. I didn't know. Because you didn't want to know, just like you didn't want to see how she treated me. I walked to the door. Go home, Thaddeus. Talk to Kylie. Look at your bank statements. Then decide whose side you're really on. After he left, Beau found me staring out my office window. You okay? No. I turned to face him. But I will be. Get me a meeting with the bank's board of directors. It's time Andrea answered some questions. And Whitney? One snake at a time. I picked up my phone and dialed Kylie. Your brother just left my office. He's seen the proof. Thank God, she breathed. What now? Now we wait. Let him process it. But Kylie, make sure Whitney doesn't know he came here. She's at the casino again anyway. Hasn't been home all day. I hung up and looked at Beau. Get me everything you can on Golden Sands Casino's ownership structure. I want to know who to talk to about their problem gambler. Going for the jugular? No, I smiled. Going for the truth? All of it. Let's see how Whitney handles being as exposed as she made me feel. The pieces were falling into place. Now I just had to wait for Whitney to make her next move. The bank's conference room felt colder than usual as Andrea squirmed in her chair, facing the board of directors. I sat quietly in the corner, watching her world crumble. These loans were processed without proper verification, the bank president said, holding up Maria's report. Care to explain, Mrs. Rose? I was helping family, Andrea stammered. Whitney needed an enabler, I interrupted, standing up. And you gave her one. Andrea's head whipped around. You did this? No, Andrea, you did this. Every time you bypassed protocol, every time you pushed through a fraudulent loan, you did this. The bank president cleared his throat. Mrs. Rose will need your resignation by end of day, and the police will want to speak with you. As Andrea was escorted out, my phone buzzed with a text from Kylie. Mom knows. She's on her way to your office. Perfect. I arrived to find Whitney already there, pacing my lobby like a caged animal. Gone was the perfectly coiffed society maven. This woman was desperate, dangerous. You little snake, she snarled. How dare you destroy my sister's career? Your sister destroyed her own career when she helped you commit fraud. I walked past her into my office. Coming in, or would you prefer to make a scene in front of my employees? She followed, slamming the door. You think you're so clever, don't you? Building this little company, playing detective? Actually, I hired the detective. Maria's very thorough. Would you like to see what she found at Golden Sands? Whitney's face went pale. You're bluffing. I pulled up the surveillance footage on my laptop. Am I? Let's watch you lose 50 grand in one night. Money you stole from your son. I borrowed it. I'll pay it back when what? When you win big? When you finally hit that jackpot? I leaned forward. You're sick, Whitney. You need help. I don't need anything from you. No? Then why are you here? She collapsed into a chair, suddenly looking every bit her age. What do you want? I want you to come clean to Thaddeus. Tell him everything. He'll never forgive me. Maybe not, but he deserves the truth. The door opened and Thaddeus walked in. Whitney's face crumpled when she saw him. Mom? His voice was quiet, broken. Is it true? Did you steal from us? I stood up. I'll give you two some privacy. No, Thaddeus said firmly. Stay. I need a witness who isn't afraid to tell me the truth. Whitney broke down, confessing everything between sobs. The gambling, the loans, the lies. How it started small after her husband died, then spiraled out of control. I just wanted to feel something, she whispered. The games made me feel alive again. And destroying my marriage? Did that make you feel alive too? Thaddeus asked. I was jealous, she admitted, looking at me. You were everything I wasn't. Young, independent, strong. I wanted to prove I still had power. Congratulations, I said coldly. You proved it, and lost everything that actually mattered. My phone buzzed, Bo texting from outside. Police are here for Andrea's statement. Want me to send them up? Not yet, I replied, then addressed Whitney. You have two choices. Get help voluntarily, or I press charges for fraud and forgery. You wouldn't. Try me. The old Zuriel might have backed down, but I'm not her anymore. Thaddeus stepped forward. Take the help, Mom, please, before you lose everything. Whitney looked between us, defeated. What kind of help? I pulled out a brochure. There's a rehabilitation center in Arizona, specializes in gambling addiction. They're expecting you tomorrow. You planned this. I planned everything. The question is, are you smart enough to take the lifeline? She took the brochure with trembling hands. And if I do, then we handle this privately. You get help, pay back what you can, and we keep this out of the papers. Why would you protect me after everything I've done? I'm not protecting you. I'm protecting Thaddeus and Kylie. They don't deserve to see their mother in handcuffs. Thaddeus touched my shoulder, the first contact we'd had in over a year. Thank you. Whitney stood up, clutching the brochure like a shield. I'll go, but not for you. For my children. For once in your life, that's actually the right reason. I handed her a plane ticket. Kylie's waiting at your house to help you pack. After she left, Thaddeus stayed. You could have destroyed her completely. Yes, I could have. I met his eyes. But revenge isn't always about destruction. Sometimes it's about forcing people to face themselves. He reached for my hand. This time I didn't pull away. I've got a lot to make up for, he said quietly. Yes, you do. I squeezed his hand once, then let go. But first, let's make sure your mother actually gets on that plane. The airport terminal buzzed with early morning activity as we watched Whitney check in for her flight to Arizona. Kylie stood beside her, handling the luggage while Thaddeus hung back with me. "She looks so small," he murmured. "I've never seen her look small before." "Addiction strips away the masks we wear," I replied. "Even the really expensive ones." Whitney turned back to us, her designer handbag clutched tight. "I suppose this is what you wanted all along, to see me broken." "No," I stepped forward. "What I wanted was for you to see yourself clearly. Everything else was your doing." "Zuriel," Kylie interrupted, "there's something you should know. Mom didn't just take loans. She sold your wedding ring." The world tilted sideways. "What?" Whitney flinched. "I needed the money. It was just sitting in your jewelry box after you left. That ring belonged to my grandmother." My voice came out strangled. It was the only thing I had left of her. "I can get it back," Whitney said quickly. "I know the pawn shop." "Don't." I held up my hand. "Just don't. Get on your plane. Get help. But don't pretend you can fix what you broke." Thaddeus stepped between us. "Mom, it's time. Your flight board's in 20 minutes." As they walked toward security, Kylie stayed behind. "There's more. The country club membership, the car payments, even the house utilities. They're all overdue. She stopped paying everything months ago." "How bad?" "Bad enough that they're threatening to foreclose on the house." I pulled out my phone and dialed Bo. "I need you to contact our lawyers. Have them look into the Ferguson family estate." "Already did," he replied. "Want the good news or the bad news?" "Both. Good news. The house is actually in Thaddeus's name. His father left it to him directly. Bad news. Whitney's been taking out equity loans against it using those forged signatures." I watched Whitney disappear through security. "Get everything ready. I want to meet with the lawyers this afternoon." Kylie touched my arm. "What are you planning?" "Damage control. Someone has to clean up this mess." "Why you, after everything she did?" "Because I'm the only one who can." I turned to face her. "Your mother's gone, your aunt's facing criminal charges, and your brother's lost in his own guilt. Who else is left?" Thaddeus returned, looking drained. "She's gone, really gone." "Not forever," I reminded him. "Just until she gets better." "If she gets better." He ran a hand through his hair. "The house is being handled," I cut him off. "But we need to talk about next steps. All of us." We ended up at my office where Bo had arranged breakfast and coffee. As we sat around the conference table, I laid out the documents Maria had compiled. "The total damage is just over $600,000, I explained. "That includes the loans, credit cards, and missing assets." "I can't believe she sold your ring," Thaddeus said quietly. "The ring is the least of our problems." I pulled out a contract. "This is a repayment plan. I'm willing to cover the immediate debts to stop the foreclosure, but I want everything in writing this time." "You'd do that?" Kylie asked. "After everything?" "With conditions." I looked at Thaddeus. "First, you take control of all the accounts. Nothing in Whitney's name, no access to family funds." He nodded. "Done." "Second, we get a forensic accountant to go through everything. No more surprises." "And third?" Kylie asked. "Third, we sell the country club membership, the vacation property, and Whitney's car collection. It's time to start fresh." Thaddeus reached for my hand across the table. "Why are you really doing this?" "Because someone once told me that revenge isn't sustainable, but building something new, that can last forever." My phone buzzed. A text from the rehab center confirming Whitney's arrival. I showed it to Thaddeus and Kylie. "She made it." Kylie sighed with relief. "Now comes the hard part," I said. "We rebuild, all of us." Bo knocked and entered with our lawyers. "Ready to start?" I looked at Thaddeus, really looked at him for the first time since that day by the fireplace. He'd changed, just as I had. Maybe that was the point all along. "Ready," I said, and meant it. As the lawyers began their presentation, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't the revenge I'd planned, but maybe it was something better, something stronger. It was redemption, not just for Whitney, but for all of us. 3 months into Whitney's rehabilitation program, I stood in her empty bedroom, helping Kylie sort through the evidence of her double life. Designer clothes still bearing price tags hung beside hidden shopping bags stuffed with casino receipts. "Look at this," Kylie held up a stack of letters. "Unpaid bills going back 2 years. She must have been intercepting the mail." "What's that?" I pointed to a small wooden box tucked behind her vanity. Kylie pulled it out, her hands shaking as she opened it. Oh my God. Inside lay my grandmother's ring, still on its delicate gold chain. She never sold it, Kylie whispered. She just wanted to hurt you. Before I could respond, Thaddeus appeared in the doorway. Mom's on the phone. She wants to talk to you, Zuriel. I took the ring and walked to his father's old study, where the speakerphone waited. Taking a deep breath, I pressed the button. Hello, Whitney. Zuriel. Her voice sounded different, clearer, less brittle. My therapist thinks it's time I started making amends. And you decided to start with me? I'm flattered. Don't be. You're the hardest one. That's why I needed to start here. I sat down in the leather chair, twisting the ring between my fingers. I found something interesting today. Want to guess what it is? Silence on the other end. Then, the ring. You found the ring. Why didn't you sell it? You needed the money. Because, she paused, because even at my worst, I couldn't destroy something that precious. But I could make you think I had. That's almost worse. I know, I am sick. The gambling was only part of it. The real addiction was to power, control. And now I'm learning to let go, to face who I really am without all the masks. She took a shaky breath. I'm sorry, Zuriel. Not just for the ring, but for everything. For not seeing your worth. For trying to destroy something beautiful between you and my son because I was jealous. I clutched the ring tighter. Why were you jealous? Because you had everything I'd lost. Youth, independence, real love. Not the arranged marriage I had. Thaddeus chose you. No one ever chose me. Your husband loved you. He loved the woman he thought I was. The woman I pretended to be. Just like I pretended to be the perfect mother, the perfect society wife. The gambling, it was the only place I felt real. Thaddeus appeared in the doorway, listening silently. I'm not ready to forgive you, I said honestly. I know, I'm not asking for forgiveness, just understanding, and maybe, someday, a chance to know the real you, not as my enemy, but as my daughter. Tears pricked my eyes. You burned my wedding photo. Yes, because it showed everything I wasn't, everything I couldn't be. Her voice cracked. The therapist says I need to make concrete amends. Actions, not just words. So I found someone who had the digital copy of your wedding photos. I'm having them all restored. It won't replace what I destroyed, but... Mom, Thaddeus finally spoke. Why didn't you tell me you were so unhappy? Because you were happy. With Zuriel. And I couldn't stand it. She paused. The therapist wants to do a family session next week. Will you both come? I looked at Thaddeus. He nodded. Yes, I said. But Whitney, no more lies, no more masks. No more masks, she agreed. I'm too tired to wear them anymore. After we hung up, Thaddeus pulled me into his arms. Thank you. For what? For being stronger than all of us. For seeing what needed to be done. Kylie appeared with a photo album. Look what I found. Inside was a picture I'd never seen. Whitney on her own wedding day, looking young and uncertain, not smiling. She was 19, Kylie explained. Arranged marriage to merge two family businesses. She never had a choice. Everyone has a choice, I said, but my voice was softer now. She just made the wrong ones for too long. And now? Thaddeus asked. I slipped my grandmother's ring back on its chain. Now we help her make better ones. But first, we need to finish cleaning out these rooms. No more hiding places, no more secrets. As we worked, I realized something. The revenge I'd wanted had transformed into something else entirely, something that might actually heal us all. But first, we had to face the truth, every ugly, beautiful piece of it. And next week, in that therapy session, we'd start doing exactly that. The autumn breeze rustled through the garden as I helped Whitney plant new roses. Her hands, once perfectly manicured, were now dirty from honest work. The rehabilitation center had released her last week, and this was her idea of rebuilding, starting with the garden where our relationship first fractured. These will bloom in spring, she said, patting the soil around a young plant. Yellow roses, your favorite. How did you know they were my favorite? I paid attention, even back then. I just never showed it." She sat back on her heels. "I was too busy being threatened by you to admit I admired you." Thaddeus appeared with lemonade, setting it on the garden table. "Mom, Zuriel, you need to come inside. The restored wedding photos are here." Whitney wiped her hands on her jeans, a sight I never thought I'd see, and followed us in. Kylie was already there, opening the package with trembling fingers. The photos were beautiful, professionally restored and enlarged, but it was the new addition that made my breath catch. A photo I'd never seen before of Whitney helping me adjust my veil before the ceremony. In it, she was looking at me with an expression I hadn't noticed that day. Pride mixed with fear. "I remember this moment," Whitney said softly. "I was thinking how much you reminded me of myself at your age, before I let bitterness take over. Why didn't you ever tell me? Because admitting that would mean admitting I'd lost myself somewhere along the way." She touched the photo gently. "You were everything I could have been if I'd been brave enough to choose my own path." Bo chose that moment to arrive, carrying files. "Sorry to interrupt, but the bank's decision came through." We gathered around the dining room table, once a battlefield of family dinners, now our place of reconstruction. Bo spread out the documents. "They're willing to restructure everything," he explained. "Thanks to Zuriel's guarantee and the sale of the assets, we've cleared most of the debt. The house is safe." "I don't deserve this kindness," Whitney said. "No, you don't," I agreed. "But family isn't about deserving. It's about choosing to stay even when it's hard." Thaddeus squeezed my hand under the table. "Speaking of choosing to stay," he pulled out a small box. Inside was a new wedding ring, but not to replace my grandmother's. "This one's different," he said, "because we're different. Stronger now, if you'll have me again. On one condition." I looked at Whitney. "You tell us the truth, all of it. No more secrets." She nodded, then stunned us all by pulling out her phone and deleting her gambling apps right there. "I choose truth. I choose family. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." Kylie wiped tears from her eyes. "Does this mean we're having another wedding?" "No," I said, slipping on both rings, my grandmother's and the new one. "We're having a renewal, a fresh start, for all of us." Whitney stood up. "Then I have something to show you." She led us to her room and opened her closet. Inside, every designer outfit was gone, replaced by simple clothes. "I sold everything. The money's in a trust for gambling addiction research." "Mom," Thaddeus started. "Let me finish. I'm moving out of the main house. The guest cottage is enough for me. The master bedroom should belong to you and Zuriel now." I studied her face. No masks, no manipulation, just raw honesty. "You don't have to leave," I said. "Yes, I do. You need space to build your life without my shadow over it. But I'll be close. Close enough to be family, far enough to be healthy." Bo cleared his throat. "There's one more thing." He handed me a letter. "The bank board wants to meet with you. They're interested in your approach to financial crisis management." I laughed. They want advice from the woman who turned her mother-in-law's gambling addiction into a business opportunity. "They want advice from the woman who chose restoration over destruction," he corrected. Whitney touched my arm, the first voluntary contact she'd initiated. "You did what I never could. You broke the cycle." Looking around at my rebuilt family, Thaddeus standing tall and independent, Kylie glowing with relief, Whitney finally real and human, Bo representing my own hard-won success, I realized something profound. "We all broke it," I said. "Together. Outside, the autumn wind scattered leaves across the garden where new roses waited to bloom. Like us, they needed time, care, and patience. But mostly, they needed the courage to grow in new directions." I touched both rings on my finger, the old and the new, the broken and the rebuilt. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's resurrection.